Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey, what's up, guys? Back again. Hope you're all doing well. Long Memorial Day weekend here, and actually managed to get some stuff done. Garden's almost all planted. Yards mowed, cleaning up stuff around the house, etc. Going out into the wild and looking for railroad insulators. That's become a new, hobby of mine the past couple years. Picked up some new ones here the past couple days. They're all just, what you'd call common Hemingway insulators, just the aqua blue, but I love those things. So anyways, hope y'all enjoyed all the Ozark Steelworks videos that Wayne and I did. I wish that I'd actually filmed more, but in the process of testing out new things and, sometimes drinking a little bit too, we either forget to film or we don't get good film or we don't think about sitting down and contextualizing everything. So I know that, that second film may have been a little bit jumbled, but I think you got the idea of it. That beautiful sub that he's building, that's an Ozark Steelworks exclusive as far as all the equipment that was on that sub and that particular type of sub. We're working on something really cool to be able to put solids into that still with an open flame under it. As far as I know, we would be the only company offering the style of agitation that we're looking at, and one of the only companies offering a still wherein you could actually run solids on a fire open flame still out there within the home distilling community. So that's going to be super cool. Also, if you saw the inline Thumper, man, that thing has got some real levity to it. We put that thing through its paces, beat the hell out of it. And we are making some improvements of that as well, making it a little bit more durable, maybe putting on a preheater. And I'm actually thinking, and Wayne was thinking too, we had been considering making a small 3-chamber, but I actually think that if you had a pot still with a drain on the bottom, that 5-gallon that I have from 13 Stills does not have a drain, but I'm gonna put one on it to where you could drain off the excess as you go, and you had 2 of those inline Thumpers stacked on one another. There's some real levity that would imitate a 3-chamber still, but I think would actually give you some options you wouldn't have on a 3-chamber as far as control regarding what goes into each chamber from the get-go and what can go in as you go through that distillation, and you'd be able to do some really cool things. I also think that from what we saw on day 2 of running that thing, on day 1, we took everything was left over in that Thumper, which was no alcohol whatsoever left in there. It was just what was left of the apple juice concentrate and the agave concentrate with a whole bunch of esters and funkiness to it. We put it back into that inline Thumper the next day and pulled even more funkiness out of it and concentrated even that much more. So I think you could do something kind of like muck or dunder with rum, but without any bacteria. It would just be the flavoring material that you had added in to that Thumper at the end of the cycling. You could take that out, put it into a 5-gallon bucket, and recycle it into the next batch. But what's in that 5-gallon bucket, you're gonna want to add some alcohol to it so it doesn't go bad on you, doesn't create bacteria, etc. And I think you'd be able to create some very interesting high-value congeners that way, absolutely. So Ozark Steelworks, guys, get out there, get you some stuff from them. Also 13 Stills, Jason's making great stuff too. I couldn't do this channel. Well, I could. This channel wouldn't be as interesting if I didn't have those fun toys to play with. And these are toys that can be scaled up to, craft distillery size levels. And that's going to be important to my future, I do believe, for sure. So I'm going to get into a couple questions here. So today from my buddy Bob Knight in Costa Rica. Hey, Alan, I've watched almost all your videos, many more than 2 times. And each time I learn new things. They're very concentrated, and I almost always pick up new gems viewing them more than once. My question is about esters. You mention them often, as do other presenters in forums and publications. Firstly, are there any undesirable esters? Secondly, do esters come through in all phases of distillation? Lastly, are significant esters lost by not distilling very soon after fermentation is completed? Thank you, as always, best, Bob in Costa Rica. So first question, are there undesirable esters? There probably are, but I can't think of any off the top of my head that would be common in well-distilled spirits or well-fermented spirits. A lot of the compounds that turn into esters via either heat or fermentation or in the barrel with the oxidization start off their life as funky, nasty stuff that you would not want to ingest, for sure. Especially if you look at some of the flavors that would eventually turn into strawberry and guava. They start off honestly a little bit like puke. So that's what I can kind of say to that. On the second question, Do esters come through in all phases of distillation? So I know that you had sent me a question similar to this before, Bob, that I didn't get a chance to answer, which was somebody was distilling a high ester rum, and they were running their still in full reflux for about an hour to try to break down those long chain fatty acids into those esters and those phenols in the finished product. And they didn't take their heads off before they did that. So the interesting thing about esters that are created by heat, so via reflux, 100% reflux, is that they tend to distill off the second that they're made. So the second they're made, they're volatile, they're off the still. So if you don't do a heads cut to start with, and you're refluxing 100%, as soon as you pull that reflux back to let some heads and hearts, or heads, I'll get this out in a minute, some fours and heads over, the second that distillate comes over, you've lost all those esters to your fours and your heads. So you want to make sure that you are basically taking off your fours and your heads before you start that 100% reflux process for time under heat to create that esterification, because they are going to distill off the minute that they are created. They are volatile for sure. Let's see. Lastly, are significant esters lost by not distilling very soon after fermentation is completed? You know, that's a good question. That's something I'd have to really do some research on. I mean, I suspect that if you're doing open top fermentation and you don't distill pretty quickly, you would probably lose some to evaporation or to their volatility. But I mean, presuming that you have open top fermenter the minute or the day after that it's done fermenting, you're going to distill it if you're a good distiller. So you shouldn't really be losing anything there. And I think a lot of home distillers, most of them, not all of them, and I'm certainly not one of them, but a great many of them do distill in airtight container, or ferment in airtight containers with an airlock. So that should give them a little bit of an insurance policy as far as losing anything, I would think. So I don't know that for sure, but I suspect that that's the case. But I'll do some research on that, Bob, and see what I can find out. I hope you're doing well out there, buddy. Moving into the next question from Stuart Taylor. Question for Alan regarding first, second, third fill casks. What are some things to be aware of when assessing casks for refilling? For example, smell for impurities such as sulfur, vinegar, infection / acetic acid. Are there any obvious warning flags to be aware of? Cheers, Stu. All right, well, that's a great question. So when I get barrels in, I get casks in that are used. I've said this on the channel before many times. I like a dry cask. I don't like a cask that still has liquid left in it, right? I don't want a cask falling apart. I want a good tight cask, but I don't want a gallon or two of what was in it previously left in there before I add my whiskey to it or my brandy, because that feels like cheating. It's no longer whiskey or brandy at that point. It's whiskey or brandy that you've added some adulterant to in order to get that flavor from. Excuse me. I do feel like there's a lot of that happens in the legal industry, and I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's regulated enough. So that's the first thing I look for. Second thing I look for is the general overall appearance of the condition of the barrels. Are they in decent shape? Do they have cracked staves? Do they look like they have leaks anywhere? Do they have holes anywhere? Are there things that I can address and that I can fix myself? Or is it just a bad barrel I got to kick out of my program? Right? You'd hate to buy in one of these expensive barrels, and finishing barrels, even when they look rough, are pretty damn expensive anymore, because it's such a specialty market for finished bourbons and things of that nature, and people pay high dollar for that stuff. But, you know, you think about something like a rum cask or a tequila cask or a mezcal cask. You know, it's been a bourbon cask before. It probably went to Scotland for a while. It ended up back down, you know, in Mexico for a while. Been out in the sun, been on the ship, been in the rain. You know, cost $400 to $900 depending on what you're getting. Super expensive for a barrel that's had the piss beat out of it. You want to make sure that it's going to hold up to what you're going to put in it, because you'd be ashamed to be out not only the cost of the barrel, but to be out the volume of liquid you would lose otherwise. Secondarily, then I do check for impurities on the inside. So, and I take a flashlight. So I've heard horror stories. I've never seen it myself, but I suspect it's true, of people finding mice and rats, etc. inside their barrels, dead mice and rats. So check it with a flashlight. Smell it. Make sure there's no smell of death in there, but also no smell of acetic acid or VA or anything of that nature that's going to interfere with what you're making. You know, I also tend to make sure, and this is not necessarily a quality issue, this is a concern of the blender and producer, make sure that whatever barrel you're going into is something that it makes sense for the product you're putting in it. So don't put sweet with sweet. Don't put heavy with heavy, right? You don't want to use, you want contrast. You want to build those flavor bridges. You want to build those interesting, contrasting flavor characteristics that make a drink interesting and give it character. So that's just as important as seeing whether or not there's VA or something of that nature in there. As well with wine barrels, winemakers do tend to sulfur their barrels or use a sulfur candle. Do not use that for your spirits, guys. It will destroy your spirits. I mean, it's something you can't get out of there. If you don't believe me, go to the store, buy some wine, run it through your still, and let me know how that turns out for you, because it's pretty rough, guys. Anyways, as always, thanks for tuning in to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. This is something I really love doing. I can't thank you guys enough for supporting this channel and supporting me. I would ask you to go to thealchemistcabinet.com and go to the warehouse link on there. That's where we sell all of our merchandise, our books, our DVDs, etc. Pick up our books, our DVDs, whatever you want to pick up, some t-shirts. All that money goes back into this channel, or the If You Have Ghosts, You Have Everything podcast. And then there is a new thing out there if you haven't seen it yet. It is the One Piece at a Time Sacred and Profane podcast. There are 2 episodes out right now that are free. We're getting ready to put up several more episodes, 1 a week, probably roughly, maybe 1 every 2 weeks, through a subscription service on Spotify. It won't be terribly expensive, but I think many of you out there would enjoy it, and I think you would support it. And, if you don't want to buy into it, that's okay, because in time, as those episodes get older and we cycle through our various seasons of that podcast, the older episodes will go up for free for you guys. So, as always, we love y'all. Later.